You wake up to the sound of rain on canvas, and for one breath you don't remember where you are. Then it comes back. The cot beneath you, the smell of iodine and wet wool, the distant thud that isn't thunder. You are a nurse. It is 1917, and somewhere beyond that canvas wall, men are dying faster than you can save them. Your hands are already moving before your mind catches up, reaching for your apron, your cap, the small tin watch pinned to your chest. 6 years old, that habit. You learned it in training, in a clean white ward with polished floors and gentle instructors. Nothing about this tent prepared you for what training could never show you. No lecture on anatomy taught you what a man's face looks like when he knows, truly knows, that he is not going home. You step outside, and the cold hits you first. Always the cold. Northern France in November does not simply chill you, it settles into your bones and stays there, a second skeleton made of ice. The mud outside the tent is ankle deep, churned by boots and stretcher wheels and the desperate feet of men who came in walking and left in a wooden box, or didn't leave at all. Somewhere close, the guns are still speaking. You've stopped flinching at the sound. That, more than anything, frightens you. How quickly a person can grow used to the language of war. This is your life now. This is what you signed yourself into when you told your mother you were going, when she wept and your father said nothing at all, when you boarded a ship crossing gray water toward a gray country that would ask everything of you and give back only exhaustion and grief, and, sometimes, just sometimes, a single life saved that made the rest almost bearable. You did not come here for glory. You came here because the telegram about your brother arrived on a Tuesday, and by Thursday you had already written your application to the nursing corps. Nobody asked you to. You simply could not sit at home, embroidering pillowcases, while boys your brother's age bled into foreign soil. Now you walk toward the receiving tent, where the wounded are already lined up on stretchers in the rain, and you understand, not for the first time, that today will not be gentle with you. The ward is called a Casualty Clearing Station, though clearing feels like the wrong word for what happens inside it. It is a place between the front and everywhere else. Not quite the battlefield, not quite safety. The wounded arrive here first, torn from the mud only hours after they were struck, and it falls to you and the handful of doctors and orderlies to decide, in seconds, who can wait and who cannot. You have learned the terrible arithmetic of triage. A man clutching his stomach, breathing shallow, urgent. A man with a shattered leg, conscious, cursing. He can wait, though every part of you wants to comfort him first, because he is loud and afraid and human. And the quiet ones in the corner, the ones who have stopped making noise at all, are so often the ones closest to death. You have 60 beds, and, on a bad night, 200 men. You have learned to sleep standing, in the way that only exhaustion teaches. You have learned to eat with blood still under your fingernails, because there is no time to wash it away before the next stretcher arrives. The days blur into a single long day that never quite ends. Morning is only a lighter shade of exhaustion. You measure time not by the clock, but by supply. How much morphine is left, how many rolls of gauze, how many pints of blood. You measure it by faces, too. The soldier from Yorkshire who calls you sister, though you're not a nun, only a nurse, and the title has simply come to mean something gentler, something like family. The boy, and so many of them are boys, 17 if a day, lying about their age to enlist, who asks you, every single morning, if you think the war will be over by Christmas. You've stopped answering honestly. You've learned that hope, even false hope, is sometimes the only medicine you have left to give. Outside, the front line pulses like something alive. Some nights it's quiet enough that you can hear owls in the shattered trees. Other nights, the horizon burns orange, and the ground itself seems to shudder, and you know that within hours the tent will fill again. Tonight is one of the quiet nights, and quiet nights are almost worse, because quiet gives you time to think, and thinking is dangerous here. Thinking brings you back to your brother, whose grave you have never seen, somewhere in a field not so different from this one. Thinking brings you back to the letters you write for men too wounded to hold a pen themselves, letters that begin, "Dearest Mother," or "My darling Alice," and that you know, with a nurse's terrible instinct, Some of these men will not live to see answered. You sit by a young corporal's cot. His name is Thomas. He's not badly wounded, shrapnel in the shoulder, already stitched and dressed, but he can't sleep, and neither tonight can you. Tell me something that isn't about the war, he says, his voice hoarse from smoke and cold. And so you do. You tell him about home, about a village with a church bell that rang every evening at 6, so reliably that farmers set their watches by it, about your mother's garden, roses that climbed the stone wall behind the house, red as the poppies that are beginning, cruelly, to bloom across the very fields where men are dying. And as you speak, you find yourself pulled backward, the present dissolving like mist. You are 8 years old again. It is summer. Your brother Edward, though everyone called him Ned, is teaching you to skip stones across the pond behind your house. He is 12, endlessly patient in the particular way only an older brother can be, guiding your wrist, laughing when your stone sinks instead of skipping, promising you'll get it eventually. You have to believe it'll work, he tells you, before you even throw it. You didn't understand what he meant then, you do now. Belief, you have learned, is not proof against failure, but it is sometimes the only thing that lets you try again after failing. You remember the smell of cut grass, the particular gold light of a June evening, the sound of your mother calling you both in for supper. You remember thinking, in the unbothered way of children, that this ordinary golden evening would simply go on forever. It didn't, of course. Nothing ever does. Ned enlisted the week war was declared, his face lit with an excitement you now understand was simply fear wearing a brave man's clothes. He wrote you letters full of jokes and small complaints about the food, letters that never once mentioned what he was truly seeing, because he was trying, in his own way, to protect you from it. The same way you now try to protect the boys in your ward, with a calm voice and a steady hand, even when your own heart is breaking. The telegram came 11 months later. Missing, presumed dead, near a village whose name you'd never heard before and have never been able to forget since. You blink, and you're back in the tent, and Thomas is watching you with the particular understanding of a man who has also lost someone, who recognizes grief on another person's face because he wears the same expression himself most nights when he thinks no one is looking. Was he a good brother? Thomas asks quietly. The best, you say, and for once you let your voice shake. You sit with him a while longer, until his breathing slows into sleep, and then you rise, because there is always more to do, always another cot, another dressing, another man who needs you to be steadier than you feel. 2 days later, everything changes. The guns that had gone quiet erupt again, closer than before, close enough that the ground itself trembles beneath your boots, close enough that dust sifts down from the tent's canvas ceiling like a slow gray snow. Word comes down the line before the wounded do, a push has failed. Casualties, heavy, numbers no one says aloud, because to say them aloud would be to admit what they mean. Within the hour, the station is overwhelmed. Stretchers line up outside in the mud, more men than beds, more wounds than hands. You move faster than you've ever moved, faster than you think your body should be capable of. Sorting, stemming, stitching, praying in the wordless way that exhausted people pray, not with sentences, just with the sheer force of wanting something to be different than it is. And then they bring in a boy you recognize, not by his face is half hidden beneath blood and mud, but by his voice, when he speaks your name, hoarse and disbelieving, as though your presence here is the one impossible thing in a night already full of impossible things. It's the boy who asks about Christmas, the one who's 17, though the papers say 19. His leg is gone below the knee, the wound packed hastily by a medic under fire, and he is losing blood faster than you can replace it, and there is another surgeon already occupied, and the chief medical officer is 3 tents away, and in this moment, in this single unbearable moment, the choice is entirely yours. You could wait for someone more senior. Protocol says you should. But protocol was written by people who have never stood exactly where you are standing, watching a boy's lips turn the color of ash while you deliberate. Or you could act, right now, with your own 2 hands, and a training that has never once been tested this precisely, this permanently, and if you are wrong, if your hands shake, if your judgment fails, it will not be a mistake you write home about. It will be a mistake you carry for the rest of your life. You think, absurdly, of Ned teaching you to skip stones. You have to believe it'll work before you even throw it. You call for the instruments. Your voice does not shake, though everything inside you does. You work by lamplight, by instinct, by the thousand small lessons that training and grief and endless nights like this one have carved into your hands without your permission. Somewhere outside, the guns continue their endless argument with the sky. Somewhere inside you, a smaller, quieter voice keeps repeating his name over and over, like a promise, like a prayer, like the only thing standing between this boy and the dark. Minutes stretch into something outside of time. You are aware of nothing but the wound in front of you, the blood on your hands, the shallow, stuttering rhythm of his breath, refusing, for now, to stop. And then, impossibly, it steadies, not fully, not safely, but steadier, enough. You step back, and your legs nearly give way beneath you, and someone, you don't even see who, presses a hand briefly to your shoulder. The only thanks there is time for, before the next stretcher arrives, and the night simply continues, as it always does, indifferent to what has just nearly been lost and nearly been saved. You don't sleep that night. You don't sleep the next, either. There isn't time, and even if there were, you're not certain your mind would allow it, replaying, again and again, the moment you chose to act instead of wait, wondering whether you were brave or simply reckless, or whether, in a place like this, there is truly any difference between the two. Dawn comes gray and unremarkable, the way it always does here, as though the sky itself has grown too tired to mark what happened beneath it. You walk between the cots one more time, checking pulses, changing dressings, murmuring the same small comforts you've murmured 100 times before. You're safe now, rest now, you're going to be all right, words that are sometimes true, and sometimes the kindest lie you have left to offer. The boy is still alive when you reach his cot. Pale, feverish, missing a piece of himself he will carry the absence of for the rest of his life, but alive. He doesn't wake. You sit with him anyway, for a moment, the way you once sat with Thomas, the way you imagine someone, somewhere, might have sat with your brother, in whatever unmarked field became his final resting place. You think about home, about the church bell ringing at 6, about roses climbing a stone wall, and a golden June evening that once felt like it would last forever, before you understood that nothing does, not childhood, not safety, not even the certainty of who you thought you'd become. You think about all the men who have passed through this tent, the ones who lived, the ones who didn't, the ones whose names you'll remember for the rest of your life, and the ones, you're ashamed to admit, already beginning to blur together into a single, endless procession of the wounded. You wonder what you will tell people if you make it home. Whether there are even words for this. Whether anyone who wasn't here could ever understand what it means to hold a stranger's life in your two hands and choose, in an instant, to fight for it, not because you were certain you could save him, but because the alternative, doing nothing, waiting, hoping someone else would decide, was a kind of death you couldn't live with, either. Outside, the guns have gone quiet again, for now. The quiet that isn't peace, only pause. You know it won't last. It never does. Somewhere beyond the tree line, more men are waiting for their turn to be carried in, and somewhere beyond that, more still are waiting simply to be sent. You touch the small tin watch pinned to your chest, still ticking, absurdly steady, through everything it has witnessed alongside you. And you find yourself wondering, not for the first time, and certainly not for the last, what kind of person you will be when this is finally over. Whether the version of you that walked off that ship, certain and afraid in equal measure, still exists somewhere beneath everything you've since become, or whether war simply reshapes a person permanently, the way water reshapes stone, slowly, invisibly, until one day you look down and no longer recognize your own hands. The boy stirs faintly in his sleep. You stay a moment longer. Somewhere far away, a church bell you cannot hear is ringing 6 o'clock, in a village that still believes, or wants to believe, that the world it remembers will simply be waiting, unchanged, whenever its sons and daughters finally come home. You are not certain, anymore, that it will be. This story is a dramatized, fictional account inspired by the historical context of World War I. It does not depict real individuals or confirmed events and is intended for narrative and educational purposes only.